Anyone having examined glass paperweights knows just how beautiful they can be and how lovingly they are treasured. Perhaps some people might not appreciate the craftsmanship that has gone into making such a work of art, how much skill and a precision, how much time and patience. This is quality control in action. Only by discarding every new paperweight with even the slightest imperfection can one maintain the highest standard. All these are to be destroyed. Every Friday afternoon, up to 40% of the weights made in this factory may be broken up. In case you're thinking of sneaking out there one night to the dump, don't bother. To make absolutely sure that nobody gets hold of any substandard work, molten glass is dribbled over them with shattering results. One's immediate response would be to think, what a dreadful waste. After all, nobody minds a tiny air bubble or a bit of the pattern out of place until they look closely at the perfect specimen, the ones which have been passed as having no flaws whatsoever, and suddenly it all seems worthwhile. They are so intriguingly beautiful, so mesmerizingly perfect. The variety of designs, patterns and colours seems infinite. This is Perthshire Paperweights at Crieff in Scotland, a tiny factory producing the finest quality glass weights in the country. The skills of glass-blown artistry go back 1,000 years before Christ. Many of the basic techniques have hardly changed since Egyptian times. To make one of the more complex paperweights which fetch such high prices today requires the complete working knowledge of every aspect of the glassmaker's skills. The main components are thousands of minute fragments of coloured glass which look like unpierced beads. These start life as blobs of molten glass, which are then gently stretched and sometimes twisted into a spiral. Although a great deal of care is devoted to each stage of the process, only a small percentage of the work will ever be up to standard. In this case, only 2 or 3 feet from this pool will be uniform enough to be usable. These are known in the business as canes, each of which will go to make up that infinite variety of colours, shapes and patterns. The raw material made from Scottish sand is called the batch, and the colours are created by adding metallic oxides. But the making of individual patterns that one can see within the silhouette canes is a time-consuming process that can only be done by hand. The picture is built up by arranging thin glass spills rather like a mosaic. It is impossible to recognise just what the picture is until it has been completed and reduced in size. But in fact, this one is going to be a robin. One may just make out the shape of the robin appearing in the spills. These ones are now ready to be heated and stretched. The distinctive style of this company has been developed by using these silhouette canes. Perthshire Paperweights has a reputation for highly individual designs, yet the young workforce has mainly been recruited straight from school without any previous experience. They work in an atmosphere of creative freedom which has been found to give the staff a strong sense of purpose and pride in what they do. Perthshire Paperweights was founded in 1968 by the late Stuart Drysdale, inspired by an American magazine article about antique French paperweights. The late Mr. Drysdale set up the factory on the basis of all skilled labour being trained at Perthshire, and every member of staff having an input in the designs of each paperweight, a policy which continues today. Mr. Drysdale's dream continues with the craftsmen at Perthshire endlessly striving to develop and find new skills. To complete the silhouette cane, the bundle has been heated so that the hundreds of rods within have fused together. Then, while still soft and malleable, the short, thick rod is drawn out, and the longer it is stretched, the smaller the design will be. All the designs must be simple to be effective, because once reduced, any small detail is completely lost. The ideas usually come from the girls who arrange the spills in the mould, and though they seem crude at this stage, they have a certain subtlety in the finished weight. The majority of canes used are multicoloured patterns without any recognisable picture images. These are called millefiori, the Italian word for thousands of flowers, and they are the traditional component of the earliest antique weights made at Clichy in France and Venice in Italy. The millefiori are painstakingly built up by placing the canes in a preset iron template. It is assumed that the glass workers of 150 years ago made up their weights in the same way as they are today in Scotland. But as with so many arts and crafts, the men of old had techniques which have been lost and so far have not been rediscovered. The more complicated the design, the more colours, shapes and sizes of cane used, the greater the risk that something will go wrong in the final heating and so ruin the effect. Perthshire Paperweights have also developed and become renowned for their lampwork pieces, beautiful bouquets. Flowers and fruit are painstakingly and skillfully built up and formed petal by petal from tiny strands of glass heated over a blow lamp and then carefully encased in glass to complete the paperweight. In the early part of the last century, French glassworkers were highly competitive and probably spent the greatest part of their lives pondering the problems and making each new pattern still more intricate than the last. Although new designs are introduced here each year, there are always a certain number of popular patterns made again and again from the same mould. These are very much the bread and butter of this firm, but even they must pass the most stringent examination before leaving the factory. It is the only way to ensure that the firm maintains its reputation as the best in the country. Perthshire Paperweights specialises in making limited editions of only 200 or 300 each year. Hidden in each is a minute dated and initialed cane which will guarantee the specialist collector value in the future. When a design has been completed, it is gently heated on the gas flame for about an hour so that all the glass is at an even temperature. Then a small ball of glass is gathered from the furnace and translucent colour is applied to the gather of glass. This will eventually form the base of the weight. During the whole process, the craftsman keeps rolling the iron rod, known in the trade as a pontil, to keep the soft glass from sagging or, worse still, from falling right off. Keeping the temperature absolutely right is critical at this stage. When he decides it's just right, he lowers quickly onto the design and picks it up. And finally, one last big blob of clear glass makes the dome which magnifies the pattern inside. This is gently coaxed into shape, first with a piece of cork soaked in water. As it cools, the design inside starts to appear. It is still soft enough for the craftsman to nip the shape of the face with a pair of calipers. The final shaping of the dome is made by pressing it firmly into an old enamel soup ladle, padded with sodden newspaper. A narrow neck is left which can be snapped off when it is cooled down a bit more and the weight is now ready for polishing and faceting in the grinding room, again skillfully and precisely carried out by hand. However perfect it might seem now after so much skill and effort has gone into it, this paperweight could still be rejected for some minute flaw which is only visible under a stronger light. Frustrating though it may be for the craftsman who has just made it, that is the price of perfection.